Top classic rock bands' evolution over the years. It's not as easy as it was 50 years ago when such a demand would spark a massive debate name-dropping legends like Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, and The Who. Are you willing to admit that Greta Van Fleet is as good as it gets these days? How about Imagine Dragons? The reality is the idea of a rock star isn't what it was in the 1970s, 1980s, or 1990s. Times change, but being the biggest and baddest rock act in the land has always meant something. Taking into account record sales, accomplishments, buzz, quality of music, and overall awesomeness, here's a look at the best rock band of the year every year since 1969. Before we start the video, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, then you will not miss our new video. 1969, The Beatles. The Beatles began 1969 with what would be their final live performance on the rooftop of the Apple Records building. So how can a band that didn't tour at all in 1969 be the greatest band in the world? Well, they were the friggin' Beatles. The band spent most of its time from 1966 on in the studio, recording its most ambitious albums. For some fans, that peaked in 1969 with the release of Abbey Road, which came less than a week after John Lennon left the band. The album sold 4 million copies before the end of the year. 1970, Led Zeppelin. The Beatles were still ruling the charts in 1970 with Let It Be, but Led Zeppelin was conquering the world in every other way. The band spent the year on tour with 2 albums that would hit one on the charts. CCR's Cosmos Factory was a force in the US, establishing the band as one of the biggest in North America. Meanwhile, Santana saw a commercial breakthrough with Abraxas, and while most important album released in 1970 may have been Black Sabbath's Paranoid, mainstream fans were more drawn to Subaru Crosby, Stills, and Nash, which had added Neil Young. 1971, Led Zeppelin. There's a reason Zeppelin earned the nickname the biggest band in the world during a large portion of the 1970s. The combination of real-life drama and brilliant music made Fleetwood Mac's landmark Rumors the best-selling album of 1977 by a wide margin. The album would spawn 4 hit singles and cement Fleetwood Mac as one of the biggest bands in the world. Bait albums from the Beatles and Pink Floyd would continue to perform well, but it was the Sex Pistols' explosive debut, Nevermind the Bollocks, that would shake the UK at its core. Still, the album failed to make an immediate dent in the US. 1979, The Eagles. The Eagles closed out 1979 with The Long Run, an album that from a sales standpoint would make releases by Led Zeppelin, Kiss, and the Knack secondary. The Long Run marked the Eagles' 3rd straight no-one album in the US and finally helped the band cross over to the UK. We'll get to Pink Floyd's massive year in a minute, but one could argue that maybe In Through the Outdoor was the last time Led Zeppelin could be considered one of the biggest bands in the world. 1982, The Clash. The Clash's first 4 albums earned the band praise from critics and diehard fans, but Combat Rock, released in 1982, became The Clash's mainstream breakthrough, led by the singles Rock the Casbah and Should I Stay or Should I Go? Duran Duran was merging new wave and rock and driving MTV fans crazy. Roxy Music was saying goodbye with Avalon. Elsewhere, Iron Maiden was reaching massive heights in the metal world with its epic album, The Number of the Beast. 1983, The Police. Synchronicity was the top-selling album in the world in 1983. No band was bigger than The Police, who did Every Breath You Take, was on the verge of becoming one of the biggest songs of all time. With Phil Collins as its lead singer, Genesis was pushing towards its commercial peak. Culture Club was making its case as one of the best new acts in the world on the strength of its debut, Kissing to Be Clever. Perhaps the biggest surprise of 1983 came from blues rockers ZZ Top, who released a mainstream monster, Eliminator, which would go on to sell more than 10 million copies. 1984, Talking Heads. A year after releasing its commercial breakthrough, Speaking in Tongues, Talking Heads embarked on its Stop Making Sense tour, regarded as one of the best concert tours in history, which was documented by a Jonathan Demme film. This was close. Van Halen's embracing of synths would elevate the band to a higher status commercially on 1984, which featured the singles Jump, Panama, and Hot for Teacher. 1985, The Cure. The Cure's move from gothic rock to a more varied style of alternative rock and pop helped introduce the band to a new audience. It helps that The Head on the Door was, from top to bottom, The Cure's catchiest album to date. 2 monster albums, Brothers in Arms and Songs from Big Chair, respectively, would make Dire Straits and Tears for Fears 2 the biggest successes of the year. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.